the channel. My name is Crawford and this is Virginia's for Lowriders. Today we're doing something a little different. Normally, we'd be out here cutting some stuff up. Bagging, body dropping, hydraulics, airbags, making something go up and down. As I was in here and the A.d.d got the best of me like it normally does while I was trying to clean up my disaster of a garage, I got sidetracked. We got this truck and it's been driving for the last couple weeks, which is awesome. But we've been working out some bugs. And working out those bugs, it gets a little sketchier the further away from home that you are. So that's what this video is going to be about. The potential to fix those bugs on the side of the road if anything does come up to where you don't have to call a tow truck. I was just going to put one of these go bags together and not discuss it. And then I discussed this with some friends of mine and we all kind of agree that maybe there's some guys out there that just don't think about these things. Maybe you're new to this world of vehicles. Even if you're not, it's good to have if you have a custom vehicle or even regular vehicle. It doesn't really matter. We're going to go over what I personally believe that you should carry with you. And you can take it or leave it. You can add to it or subtract from any of these tools that I suggest or these things to bring along with you that I suggest. I'm going to give you some stories of instances where I needed these tools and instances where I really could have used the tools but didn't have them with me. I'm going to go over the things I used to carry and the things that I carry now and the things that we're potentially going to start carrying from now on because of instances that I've came across where I really could have used something. But before we start discussing all of those things, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed and do all the normal YouTube-y things with the likes and the comments and whatnot. And we're just going to get into it. So all of my seasoned guys that have been doing this forever, I've been doing this for around 20 years. I've had things that gone up and down and I've built vehicles for friends, and there's been instances where I've had to save some friends and they've had to save me, and all of those things. This is to help mitigate all of those possibilities and that tow truck bill, because we all know when that tow truck driver shows up and your truck is literally laying on the ground or your car is laying on the ground, it's going to be an extra bill. You have to figure out how to hook that thing up to a truck and get it down the road without damaging it any further than it already has. Some of these things seem very simple and very self-explanatory, but I'm going to go over them because, again, if you're young or if you're just somebody that's never been into these things, you might be like, oh wow, that's that one thing that I never thought of. And then I would appreciate it if y'all comment down below and let me know what I'm lacking, what I should be carrying with me that I didn't mention, and maybe scenarios that you've ran into that you think is a reason why I need to add something else. I've built a lot of bagged vehicles with friends and for friends. This is my first bagged vehicle that I've personally owned because I'm a hydraulic guy, and everything I've ever built for myself to this point has had hydraulics on it. So this is a little different for me. So we're going to be adding some things that I normally wouldn't carry while driving that car around, all while trying to keep this pretty simple and everything to fit in one of those cheap Husky bags that you can buy from Home Depot for under $10. That's the game plan. I'm not positive if all of it's going to fit in there, but we're going to try. Over the years, this is the tool bag that I've been carrying around in the Caprice for the last couple of years. I've revised these tools numerous times, and I've managed to take tools out of the Caprice and use them in the yard and lose them. So we're going to build a Lowrider bag, I guess you could say, and a Minitruck bag or a bagged vehicle bag, I guess. We're going to start over from this, and this is probably going to get divvied up in between the garage and whatnot. So I hit the local Walmart the other day and I picked some stuff up, and my thought process is you're not a tool hoarder that has been collecting tools non-stop for the last 20 years and you buy a lot of stuff from garage sales and you're piecing something together, and you're a normal person and that's starting out with nothing. So I hit Walmart and I tried to do this as cheap as possible, and if this all works out, I'm going to duplicate these bags and put them in probably most of my vehicles. So while cruising down the aisles of the Walmart, I found a very cheap wrench set. This wrench set said it was on sale, normally $11 and down to $8. When I rang it up, it came up as $5, which is ridiculous. Yes, this is Chinese garbage, and you're not using it all the time, so it really doesn't matter. If it gets you off the side of the road one time, and the wrench breaks in half after that, it's worth the money. You do not need to be buying Snap-on or Matco or anything crazy and spending a ton of money on this setup. We don't need that thing. Usually when it comes to these, a single zip tie is plenty enough to keep this all together, so you don't have to worry about it. So we're at, like, if you paid retail price, I think it's like $10 or $11 or whatever those were, which is still extremely cheap. This kit covers from this kit covers from 6mm all the way up to 19. They're all very common sizes when it comes to most vehicles. The Caprice is a little different. It's in that weird mid-range where some of it's metric, some of it's standard, but GM really didn't know what they were doing at the time, and they wanted to participate in the rest of the world's activities. Second thing, adjustable wrenches. I was going to purchase 2 of these. I talked myself out of it. These are like $7. Again, not the greatest quality, but it's not super loose like the Harbor Freight ones that I've come across. But is a must-have. That technically could take the position of any of these, but it's good to have 2 wrenches occasionally, especially when you're talking about 4-link stuff. As I was putting all of this together, I was trying to keep a relative budget in mind, because I know I don't got a lot of money, and I imagine everybody on here doesn't want to blow a bunch of money doing this exact same thing for tools that hopefully you'll never need in your entire life, and they'll possibly never get touched, but you'll have them that one time just in case. I found this set. This was $14. I have a ton of vice grips on the wall. I have a ton of these pliers, again, all over my garage. But, again, if you plan on doing this, just trying to give you some examples of how this can be done. I'm hoping for realistically under $100. That's not going to include the add-ons that I'm going to put in later, but this will include just the tools. I'm going to try and keep a tally of this, maybe on the bottom of the screen. This cheap kit, again, not the best quality, but hopefully you'll never even need to use this stuff, and if you do, you'll have it. You got a pair of vice grips, some wire cutters, channel locks, needle nose, and some regular old pliers. Again, this was like $14, I believe, $7. Next one up on the list is a regular cheap utility knife, because this can get you out of a pinch, especially if you have a newer vehicle. Let's just say, for instance, I'm going to start throwing out scenarios here. I've built a few Hondas on hydraulics over the years, and if you're a bagged car guy and you have something that's newer, you will understand plastic fender liners. Whenever they start getting attached to tires that are moving at a high rate of speed, usually they just tend to rip themselves apart and turn into this terrible plastic that it could potentially start a fire. So this is kind of a must when it comes to that, because if you don't have a decent knife, I'm not saying this is the greatest quality, because again, this was $1.95, but that $1.95 could potentially save your fender from removing half of your fender. Once that plastic fender liner starts to grab and it rips it completely off. Usually it mangles up the fender also. Next up on the list, again, self-explanatory, kind of basic here. This is a screwdriver set, also from Walmart. Again, you could do this exact same scenario from Harbor Freight or wherever you want. I just happened to be at Walmart whenever I got this idea that I was going to go through with this. This kit, I want to say it was like $14 or $15. It comes with a whole lot of stuff in one thing. In this cheap kit, you have a reversible bit driver screwdriver from 4mm up to 12mm, or from 5/32 up to 15/32. Little sockets that we can use later on in other tools. Torx, Allens, square bits, and all sorts of different drives of Phillips and flatheads. Tons and tons of options. Again, keep saying it, not the best quality, but it'll fix you in a pinch. So far, I don't know what the counter's at, but we're probably around $40, I'd say. I'm just showing this as an example. All of my kits up until this point, I've been buying these cheap Husky kits, and this little kit will get you by in a lot of situations. This kit goes on sale during Black Friday for like $15. I think normal price is like $20 or $25 now. It comes with a little ratchet, a screwdriver, an Allen set, adjustable wrench, and a ton of little sockets. And this little kit I've had for probably 12 years. I thought that this was the go-to kit for a long time. And then Amazon, I just searching and searching the other day, and I came across something that I can't believe the prices. Again, I don't know how the quality of this stuff because I've never purchased it before. This kit at the time of me purchasing it, I've never heard of Bodie or whatever that says on there. This kit was $33 at the time of me buying it. $33 for however many pieces this is, 62 pieces, is kind of ridiculous. I don't know how long this ratchet's gonna last or any of these things. But whenever I was looking into buying these things, I found a kit that came with a very broad range of sockets that went pretty high to accommodate for 4-link bolts or for anything that's like larger. I kept coming across a lot of through socket things, and I thought that maybe I would go that route. And then I got looking into through socket stuff more. Not a lot of them went up in very high in sizes. This kit goes up to 23mm and 7/8. And in that, we can actually grab a hold of a lot of 4-link bolts. Again, I've never used any of this, but it seemed like too good of a deal to pass up. I don't know anything about the quality of this, but it has to work at least one time. When I'm putting these kits together, I generally try to find the most quantity of things that you can purchase for the least amount of money and hope that everything's going to work out as far as quality goes. In this set, we have Phillips, flatheads, Allens, Torx, extension, a ton of sockets, small extension. Got a couple spark plug sockets in here. A very super high quality ratchet here. But again, for $30, $33, I don't know if we can get anything comparable to this in any other way for a kit that you're just going to throw in your truck and hopefully, again, never use. This next part, it's not necessary. You could keep everything from the Bodie kit or whatever kit you end up buying in the kit box thing that it comes with. This is just my idea to try to keep everything condensed and everything to fit in the bag like we've discussed before. I've been using these Ernst socket rails for a very long time. They are very sturdy and everything stays on them. I have probably 6 times as much at work. Everything quarter turns and locks onto the rail. I have some spare rails and a bunch of spare socket holders. So we're going to remove all of this stuff. We can fit the majority of it onto a single rail, and we're going to go from there. While I'm putting this other rail together, I'll give you some scenarios where just this kit alone, or just those wrenches alone, would have really helped me out. Let's just say 4 years ago, driving the Caprice to work, just because I'm not very smart. Taking one of our main roads, which is Route 1 around here. I see a cop. I'm like, oh wow, that's probably not good that he's 2 cars behind me. So I did the right thing. I pull over into a random parking lot. And I wait for the cop to go by, because I'm floating down Route 1, a ½ inch off the ground. And they tend to frown upon things like that. As I pull over into the parking lot and I'm waiting for him to pass me, I hear a hissing noise. It's an 80s Caprice that I dug out of the woods, and it has dummy lights that sort of work. I hear hissing, get out, look at the radiator, and he's awfully low on coolant. I'm trying to figure out where this hissing noise is coming from, and I see smoke coming off the back of the engine. Just so happens that the line going to the back of the intake that goes into the core support had a tiny little hole in it. That little tiny hole managed to spew all of the coolant out of almost the entire system, and I didn't know anything about it because the dummy light never came on in the car. Luckily, it rained the night before that, and there happened to be a very large puddle of water in the parking lot that I was parked in while the car is overheating and I knew nothing about it. Not far after I purchased my Lincoln. The Lincoln is my daily driver, so I transferred my Husky Go bag into the Lincoln probably a couple weeks before that. Didn't think anything of it. So I scour the entire car and I can't find any tools. I found one screwdriver bit, and by screwdriver bit I mean one of these little guys underneath the seat, and I found one adjustable wrench about 1/3 the size of this. That coolant line ran behind the intake and underneath the distributor. On a Chevrolet with a HEI distributor, the distributor head is, the cap is this big. It's massive. So that coolant line goes underneath that cap. And if I just had one of these wrenches, 13 millimeter, I believe is what it is, just to crack the distributor loose so I can lift it up and get to that single tiny coolant line, it would have been a very simple process. But I didn't have one of those. I didn't have anything but that adjustable wrench and that screwdriver bit. So I proceeded to take that adjustable wrench and that screwdriver bit and loosen up the hose, take my pocket knife, cut the hose down, and then force the distributor around the bolt to where I could get it clocked, to where I could actually get underneath of it and reattach that line. But if I had just 2 of these little tools, I probably wouldn't have to have forced anything, and it would have went a little smoother. I don't understand why this kit came with a 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter, because none of these things are 1/2 inch. It's kind of weird. Here we are. 2 rails instead of this very large box. I didn't add 4 of the Phillips bits because nothing on that truck is a number 1 or a number 3. So it really doesn't make any sense. These will just make it in the toolbox. I'm gonna toss out this very stinky box. I think we'll go ahead and start placing some stuff into the bag. Nice thing about these rails is they fit perfectly inside of this thing. We have two very skinny rails that take up almost no room in the bag. Our wrenches, pliers, adjustable wrench, vice grip. We have all of these random little bits. Toss them in the sides so we don't lose them. Extension, ratchet, this thing that nobody ever uses and they never work on anything. Razor knife, blades. And we still have easily half a bag to fill up. Continue to go through the tool items before we get to the non-tool items. Another tool item, I don't know how, I have a hammer addiction. You've probably seen in the back of my videos. It's a lot. I have a problem. But yard sales, garage sales, Carlisle, Hershey, I see a hammer. Most of the time people just give them away, sell them for $1, $2. I have a ton of these little, extremely heavy, I don't even know the ounces or the pound of this. This is actually a 3-pound hammer. And for some reason I know why, but for reasons that nobody else can explain, I have a ton of these little tiny 3-pound hammers. And I would definitely add one of these. It's short, so it doesn't jam up the bag, but it has enough oomph to fix a fender, beat your buddy's roll pan straight after he drags his truck down the highway, or his bumper gets halfway torn off while you're driving and it's touching the tire. This little guy do a lot of work. I have a ton of these, didn't see a point in buying them new. At Harbor Freight, you can get their 3-piece pry bar set for under $10 sometimes. The middle one, whatever length this is, definitely going in the bag. Usually it doesn't fit in the bag to where it'll zip up, but you can kind of wedge it in there and eventually get it zipped up. So I have tons of doubles that are going to go into the new Caprice bag. One thing that did not come in the plier set, some plier sets that I've seen on Amazon do come with these. I highly recommend is wire strippers and something that can crimp. And we'll explain more of that later on when we keep filling the bag with non-tool items. These are like $7 at Walmart, but you don't have to buy them from Walmart. I have a ton of those really big ones that are kind of unwieldy and I kind of hate, but the little guys, again, those are going in the bag. I wanted to give another scenario. This has happened to me 2 times, and the reason that I stress vice grips so much. Vice grips are sockets, vice grips are screwdrivers, vice grips are wrenches, vice grips are used for everything. Let's rewind, let's just say like 8-10 years ago. I'm driving my 2500 down the road, and if anybody knows Cat Eye Chevrolets, they understand that the fuel lines are junk, and they understand that the brake lines are junk. Cruise down the road, this old lady slammed on her brakes, I slammed on my brakes, and the pedal goes to the floor. It's happened to me 2 times before I had enough money to buy the kit, because at the time I didn't make any money. And in that scenario, got out, cut the brake line because it's already blown, bend it over, crimped it, and then snapped the vice grip on the end of it, and I made it to work that day. And I fixed it in the parking lot when I got there. That happened to me 2 times in that same truck before I could afford to buy the kit. I didn't have to call a tow truck. So now we got most of the tools down. This will get you very far in repairs as far as pretty much anything goes. You can take apart the fuel system, the suspension, pretty much the only thing you can't do is press in a ball joint. But you got this guy. You can do most things with those tools, those very, very simple tools on the side of the road. And I've done a lot of repairs on the side of the road with those simple tools over the years because again, didn't have any money and I bought a lot of junk, really crappy cars, and then drove them home. But we're going to get into non-tool related things that I highly recommend bringing with you. In the bagged world, which exactly the same in the lowrider world, this same scenario, I have the same exact thing. We're just trading airline for hydraulic line. That's it. I have the same stuff in the back seat of the car or underneath the seat of the car in hydraulics. You have two of these actually made up. These are T's with the correct size line to go to your bags, with a shut-off valve just in case, and a Schrader valve. If I was to blow a line from the tank or the air management to one of the bags in anywhere which way whatsoever, I can crawl underneath the truck or pop the hood, disconnect the lines, and put this T in line. I can take the T, fill up the Schrader valve, or T into a line, or just run a single wheel that will actually send air to both and have them teeter-totter between each other. Very simple and easy to make. It costs you probably 30 bucks in materials to make this if you went with cheaper fittings. This is all stuff that I had laying around, except for some stuff that on the way to Mini Nats I had to purchase Schrader valves. Everything else was already on the truck. Just roll them up, snap some zip ties on them. This thing's really small. You can slide it under the seat. You'll never know it's there until you need it, potentially. To go along with those guys, I recommend a T, just the same size that you already have plumbed into the truck. Again, this will get you out of a pinch. There's been some scenarios with friends where a airline laid against the exhaust or an airline chafed against part of the frame rail or any of those instances. And this little thing right here would have saved us a whole lot of headache, because all this is a 3/8 in and a 3/8 out. You can simply just cut the line and bring this with you. And that actually does bring up one tool that I did not put in the bag, an airline cutter. Bring an airline cutter with you. Keep it with you at all times, because in any of these scenarios, you can just cut a line, throw in a 90, a straight, a T. We'll throw all of those in the bag. A very, very underrated non-tool that we're going to be adding to the bag, which is huge because, let's just say for a scenario's sake, a line strips out of your air tank, a return strips off of your hydraulic tank, anything that it just needs to be fixed right now. I fixed a slowdown on one of my hydraulic trucks back in the day on the side of the road and end up just keeping it that way for a really long time until I got some money together to buy a new slowdown. Is JB Weld. You fix radiators with it, you can fix a gas tank with it, you can fix tons and tons of things with this stuff, and it's cheap. I'll add links for everything that I'm talking about in this video, but highly recommend, just for some insurance, JB Weld. I have fixed a radiator on the side of the road. That slowdown that I mentioned. I put a coolant sensor in an intake on a buddy's Mustang that he still drives with that sensor in the intake. There's a lot of uses for JB Weld, and it can get you out of a lot of pinches. And again, save you from that terrible expensive ride. Just for whatever that stuff is, $8 or $7, I don't even know. I'll add it to the screen. To the next non-tool item. Very, very simple things here. I use these all the time. I use them in the garage when I'm painting things. I use them in the garage when I need to hang something up to mess with it, or sometimes I use them for temporary permanent uses on vehicles in case I just feel really lazy and I need to hang something underneath of a vehicle to move it around the yard or whatever it may be. Go to the HVAC section of a Home Depot, Lowe's, or anything like that. You can get them off Amazon. These ones I actually bought off Amazon because I needed a restock, and they're very cheap off Amazon. These are massive zip ties. They hold hundreds of pounds. I will add links for any of these things if you need them. But with these, again, Roll them up. You can snap a little zip tie on them. Throw these in the bag. They take up barely any room. And to go along with those guys, normal zip ties. Always use normal zip ties. There have been many, many scenarios of countless things of needing something to just move out of the way. For instance, got the Mazda together. Never would have thought that the Mazda's factory speedometer cable, whichever way it lays in there coming out of the firewall, just made its way over to my brand new header and melted almost in half until it hit the metal part, and now it's trash. Hopped out, threw a zip tie on it, prevented a fire on the side of the road because that plastic was steadily melting and just billowing smoke out from underneath the hood. Cheap insurance. Big zip ties, little zip ties. This is what I would consider a common yard sale, garage sale. They're always in somebody's pile of crap that they want to get rid of because they bought it for a project and they'll never use it again. And if you're a car guy, most likely you have this stuff laying around, is a cheap spool of cable. I'm not saying that you need to carry the entire spool with you, but it does help. For instances, again, countless things that's happened with the junk vehicles that I've purchased over the years where you're driving down the road and the fuel pump stops working because the last guy put wing nuts from a house on there and the wing nuts fell off while you're going down the highway and the fuel pump turns off. And that little piece of wire that he had bubble gummed and wing nutted together also got ripped out by a tire or whatever it may be. However that scenario happened, just having a small amount of wire with you, at least enough to reach from the front of the truck to the back of the truck or car, bring some wire with you. Again, the spool is kind of unnecessary, but you find these things all over the place. People are always getting rid of these at yard sales for some reason. And every time I see them, I buy them because I'm a hoarder and I have a ton of them. So this also going in the bag. This might be a very simple thing that you might think, duh, or of course you would carry that with you. But again, for the guys that aren't thinking of all of these scenarios that I've personally been through with me or my friends, very good thing to keep with you is at least one new roll of electrical tape and Teflon tape. This is universal between lowriders and bag trucks or cars or any of them because there's always a scenario where a line could potentially just start leaking out of nowhere. So bring these with you. These are also going in the bag. I got a new roll of Teflon. I gotta find some electrical tape that doesn't look like it's 150 years old. One thing that I do carry with me in the Caprice or any of my lowriders is a single cylinder. Doesn't matter what size cylinder it is. Usually I'll carry an 8 or a 6 with me because they're small and again you can slide it under the seat and you'll never know it's there until you need it. I also keep O-rings and seals with me just in case it's easier to just pull the cylinder apart on the side of the road and throw some new seals in it. If it's that simple, if the cylinder's not bent or damaged in any way, it's easy enough to just rebuild a cylinder on the side of the road. Same thing goes for airbag trucks. Of course, you're not going to rebuild a bag. Bags rubbing happens a lot. Bags deteriorating over time and getting dry rotted and falling apart happens a lot. My buddy Rodney had a bagged Civic back in the day, and he had this crazy contraption underneath the hood to where the bag sat at this really, really wild angle, and it was like these two ends were almost touching each other, and the bag de-skinned. I've never seen that happen ever again, but this rubber piece will actually come off of the inner bag, which is really strange. But when you buy these brand new, these things are compressed and they have these really strong packing ties on them, and they're only 3 inches tall. So again, this could easily fit underneath of most seats or in the trunk of a car. Of course, this wouldn't work for like a stance guy's car because those bags are weird, and I guess you could keep one of those with you if you felt like taking the entire thing apart and sliding a new one on. Never personally been down that road to experience that, But I have been in vehicles that have popped a cylinder or blown a bag or any of those things. I've been in a lot of vehicles that overextended and ripped ball joints apart. So actually in the Caprice, that's another thing. I keep a spare set of upper ball joints in the Caprice. It's weird, but it's a good insurance because the Caprice is about 1,000 pounds heavier than it's supposed to be, and whenever everything goes to crap and it's sitting on the frame, the tow truck driver is going to look at you like you're crazy when he shows up. Could have easily taken 4 bolts out or 5 bolts and swapped that in a new ball joint. Ball joints break on lowriders. It's a thing. If you go crazy and you start three-wheeling around corners and tearing stuff up, stuff tends to break. My Civics over the years, I've broken 2 ball joints driving down the road in a Civic because they get ridiculous lift with hydraulics on them. And those cheesy little eBay ball joints that I could afford back in the day did not like that at all. So an airbag, I would say, is a must. A cylinder, some lines, just to where if any of these scenarios happen, you can get the car to where it's operational again. A lot of guys carry 2x4s with them, and they'll carry a block of steel. I've seen some companies now making these little bump stop things that you can bolt to your truck if you need to on the side of the road. Personally, if I have a chance and I'm going to like jack the car up and do all of these things, I'd rather just fix it on the side of the road rather than. I've driven home with 2x4s and 2x6s wedged underneath of lowriders, and it is a terrible ride. And by the time you get home, usually it bends something. And most of the time, that thing that it bends is a control arm or a spring pocket or part of the rear end or something that's probably not supposed to be bent. In reality, the time that you spent ratchet strapping that block of wood in there, you probably could have just changed the bag or the cylinder, or maybe fixed the line. Found a roll of tape that's from this century. Another thing to go along with your little roll of wire and your crimpers, an assorted random amount of butt connectors in various sizes. Because again, stuff happens all the time that are always a surprise. Put them in a little baggie, throw them in the bag. Electrical tape in the bag. Another thing a lot of people don't think about, hose clamps break. These things don't last forever. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens sometimes. Get you a couple of your common sizes, random radiator, and then your smaller hoses. Throw those in the bag. One thing that I've never been able to do because I've always had hydraulics, and I would say it's one upside if everything is working correctly. If everything isn't working correctly, we'll start there. It's good to have, like I have one of those little slime brand, you can buy literally any brand, it doesn't matter. One of those little tiny air compressors that you just plug into a cigarette lighter. And that's where the Schrader valves come in handy, because if there's a gas pump near you, and those places tend to have free air, some of them charge you or whatever, you can get the truck up in the air. If you can get the truck to a gas station that has that. So let's say for whatever reason your air management fries, doesn't work anymore. You have a valve block like I have. If for whatever reason that block goes bad, you're stranded. You have nothing, no way to get home because that block controls everything. It's one thing that's nice about hydraulics is there's usually a workaround to where you can get home if it's just a lack of a power supply, because you can always disconnect this and plumb this into that and plumb that into this and change solenoids and change wiring, and you can hot wire some stuff and make it go up and down most of the time. Air's a little different. That's why I highly recommend this, because it makes it very rudimentary and more mechanical rather than relying on that air management block. So that's where this idea came from, and it could help me later on down the road. If you have air in your car, that's potential air to do anything that you want with. that air can fill up a tire on the side of the road. So if you bring a plug kit with you to plug a tire, usually I keep plug kits and everything, at least the reamer tool, which I don't know where my kit is now. Caught me off guard here. Usually I'll bring that with me in most of the things that I own, at least a couple plugs and the reamer and the actual plug installer. If that's the case, on the truck, I have to plug a tire to get me off the road. The air that's already on the truck, there's 5 gallons of it, almost 200 psi. I put a quick disconnect on the side of the tank, and it's easily accessible even if the truck is laid out. To go along with that, I bought this kit from Hobo Freight. You can buy these off Amazon. You can buy them. You can piece them together at Walmart. This was 22 bucks. I'm not saying that this needs to be a part of this, but this is a nice thing to have because with this kit, this 20 feet of air hose can potentially fill any of the tires on the truck. It can potentially lift the truck up if the air management was to take a crap. It can potentially blow off the windshield for whatever reason because you're an idiot and you drive around with no wiper arms on your truck like I did last weekend. I'm going to put all this together. Probably not on camera because y'all understand what I'm saying here. I'm going to put all this together. I'm not totally sold on the hose. I was trying to find something that would lay flat, like a normal hose, but I couldn't find that in a kit like this to where it comes with literally everything and I don't have to tap into my supply at the house. But I might try and find a hose later on that fits under the seat a little bit better, but this really isn't that big. But with this, I can fill any of the tires on the truck. I can fill the air system on the truck if I need to. This $20 could potentially save my butt later on down the road. And again, save me from a tow truck. So, one thing I do recommend, get you a couple of these cheap carabiners if you want to keep everything together. These little carabiners are a nice touch. And then this is everything that I've shown in the video except for the airbag and the air hose is inside of this one $10 bag. You can add anything to this. Like this would have normally, unless I had made those tees to do everything, which this still can potentially be added to the bag. Just say 25 feet of line. Same thing with the Caprice, 25-ish feet of line just to get you fluid or air from the rear to the front. Let me know if y'all think that I need to add anything to this, or if maybe I'm too paranoid and I'm carrying around too much, but I think 20 pounds worth of stuff is well worth the security and potential of saving hundreds of dollars on a tow truck. I think that about sums it up. Other than a jack and a good tire iron, which I don't recommend ever using a ratchet as a tire iron, because most of the time they don't make it to the end of getting the wheel all the way off. In scenarios like my Caprice, I can't use a normal jack because the car weighs too much. So the one that the car came with would just fold in half, or just wouldn't lift it. The truck is a little different. Doesn't really weigh that much, but a decent small jack. In my daily driver Lincoln, the factory jack actually folded in half on me when I was changing the tire on the side of the road. So I actually have one of those really small ones that goes in a plastic case. It could be a good option. They're kind of bulky, but I daily drive it again, so worth that peace of mind. But let me know what y'all think. I've been working on the truck, and we're going to get back on that next week. I didn't have enough to actually put an entire video together because I've been trying to work out some bugs, which we've gotten through a lot of them, and it actually fires up and drives so far everywhere. We could do a little valve adjustment and whatever. That's not what this video is about. Let me know what y'all think, and I'll see you next Sunday. There's new videos every single week.